And welcome to another in the series, Why I Write. My name is Totlin Oliver, and I'm your host for this another intriguing session where we're going to be having a very interesting discussion with a father-daughter duo. How have you been? Hope that your week has been great and you know that all will continue to unfold very well for you. Now, as usual, at the beginning of my live cast, I always like to be able to share out this link so that individuals will know where to find us. So we are going to just share our links to our Facebook page so that we are able to have the folks who showed such great interest in joining us this evening that they will have the opportunity to watch as we go live. Doing Wire Right is such an intriguing experience, especially for me as a host, I think, because I get to speak with so many different authors, writers, and personalities in different genres that I am so encouraged every week to gather together and get together with folks who are doing extremely well when it comes on to the business of writing and publishing and even creating, whether it is poetry or writing a memoir or even academic writing, because it is important that we demonstrate that we do indeed have a voice. And tonight, our authors are simply no different. I'm going to start with the patriarch of the family, Mr. Errol Bean, who is a former, what you may call it, former minister, and but also still a musician, still ministering through his writing, still doing all the creative things that his own individuality brings to the table. Errol has been here on our program a few times before on Why I Write. So tonight it gives me great pleasure to welcome along with him his daughter, Dr. Dahlia Bean, who he's so proud of. And so it's going to be interesting to see the dynamic tonight between father and daughter. We're going to be talking to both writers and authors about their family perspective, just how living in the same, let's see, not just house, but the mindset of study and intrigue, how this affects their relationship together and apart, and of course, how it pours into and impresses upon their writing acumen and what even led Dahlia to get there. I want to say hi to Andreen Bonner. Thank you for just joining us. We're so glad to have you. Thank you, Andreen, another fine author. Both of our authors today hail from Jamaica, and we're going to learn more about them. So help me welcome to our Wire Right stage, Dahlia and Errol Bean. Welcome, welcome, welcome,
You.
guys.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for having us.
It is so good to see you all. It is great to be able to just have both adults here on the show so that we can talk about this business of writing and the importance of doing it in the first place and how we came to do it. So, welcome, Delia. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, great. I know you're a lady who travel all over the world, so I'm glad that you are present here. Where did you just come from, Delia? I know
Well,
you.
most recently, I was in Ethiopia.
Right. Some exciting things were happening for you over there in Ethiopia. What was that like? And was
Oh,
it
it was really wonderful. It was a very rich experience. So as they're related to the issue of the African Union and reparation, as I'm a historian by training. But outside of that, the cultural aspect and being in this space with such a rich history and so on was really, really wonderful. Very
that
good
is
experience.
absolutely amazing. Now, Andrine is saying that she can't hear me, but I'm not sure. You're able to hear me, right, Delia? And you're able
Yes,
to hear me,
hearing
Errol.
you loud and
Yes,
clear.
I'm hearing you.
So, Andrine, you may need to check your volume button. Yes, you may need to check your volume button. So here you are going to Ethiopia, and you say it was your first time.
Yes, it was my first time to Ethiopia. Yes.
Hmm. And what was that which stood out to you most when you landed there? What were your first impressions?
There's a lot of coffee. Coffee originated in Ethiopia, so it's a
Mhm.
very rich part of their culture. It's in corner shops everywhere.
Mhm.
So that stood out to me, the scent of it everywhere. It stood out to me as well that it was very cold, and oftentimes we don't think of African countries as having winter. Uh,
Mhm.
so yes, it was very cold. And then one of the other very interesting things is that Ethiopia uses a 13-month calendar. So currently they're just in 2018. So when I went, it was 2017, and they celebrate their new year in September 11, I believe. So they are now in 2018, and some of us are here wondering who's going to tell them about COVID, because it really 2019 has not happened yet for them. But
Wow.
everywhere. That was
Very-
as well. Very rich and experience being there. Wasn't there for too long, but it's really a wonderful space to be in. I do encourage more and more Jamaicans to go to Ethiopia if you can.
I thought Ethiopia was only, well, not only visited, but I thought with all the visits of Rastafarians from Jamaica, that they would, at least say, I've never heard these things about Ethiopia ever.
Yes, it's very rich, very diverse, and has a lot going on. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful Addis in particular, Addis Ababa, the capital, very beautiful city as well. And of course, yes, the ties to our Rastafari community and a lot of Jamaican history and culture resonating there. But I mean, I guess that happens anywhere you go. You say you're from Jamaica and they say something, iconically Jamaican. But
Right.
certainly that happened quite a bit there too.
Okay. Amazing. Now, Errol, how does it feel to be here with your daughter on Why I Write tonight?
Well, I am very happy and delighted to have her. And I must tell her thanks because just to have left Yui early to get home, to her home, to
Hmm.
be here on time is a great sacrifice. And I know she put a lot into it. She doesn't stop working. She has all kinds of books doing, and it's a new semester. So the fact that she's here with me and you in this space is, I don't take it for granted because it's not just because I am her father, but it's because she is committed to sharing her knowledge whenever she gets the opportunity. And I'm deeply honored to have her in this space with me. Can't express how honored I am.
You must be proud, Dad. You just
Extremely
must be.
proud.
You must be just proud, Dad. And
Yes,
that's what we want to have happen. All right,
yes.
let's start at the beginning. Basically, both of you, well, for you, Errol, I remember what one of our earliest meets was when you did that biography for Cynthia Schloss,
2001,
2001, A Flower Blooms. I remember that.
98.
It
Oh,
was in, yeah,
1998.
because I remember that because I
Yes,
remember my son was very, very young at the time.
yes,
And that stood out for me. And yes, my heart pained when we heard that we had lost Cynthia Schloss.
yes.
So, how did it feel? That wasn't your first book, though.
No, the first one was A Flower Blooms with a painting of Dela on
Exactly.
it, and it's outstanding. I was blown away when I saw the book, and first book out and so on. See my words in print. I
Mhm.
really was bowled over, and because Dela was on the front and on the back as well. Incidentally, that picture was painted by Mortimer, the great Mortimer, who's
Okay.
his father, the original Mortimer, painted that of Dela for the front cover of the book.
I
So
don't know. I don't know this Mortimer, though.
this Mortimer is a big deal. Maybe he hasn't broken much into America, but he has a very big sound. If you look him up, he has one of the biggest songs that Scotiabank uses. Well, somebody's going to pay me for all of this promotion, but Scotia uses one of his big songs called Lightning. And
Uh-huh.
yes, and his guy who we knew from him was a small kid.
Okay. So, how did you feel, Delia, seeing that your dad at the age, and what age were you when that happened? When you see your dad put your face on the cover of his book?
I would have been about 16 at the
At
time. I
Wolmer's?
was in sixth form at Wolmer's, so about 16 years old. I don't know, a lot of things that I think back then I probably didn't take it as seriously as I should. I generally don't take things very seriously. Daddy will tell you that.
Yeah, she's very
My
light-hearted.
toxic traits, a lot of things just kind of go over my head. But it was very impromptu. I remember just sort of I had on my Woolmer's uniform and I put on this blue t-shirt over the skirt. Somebody just took a photo and then I just saw this painting emerge. But that is always doing that, lots of behind the scene creative work from before I was born and during my lifetime. So I suspect it didn't come over to me as anything unusual. He,
Yes.
wanted me to be part of that in that way. I was honored, but as you're 16
Never
years,
take it for
you don't
nothing.
really I don't really get the full impact,
Yes,
but
you didn't take it as anything. No
yes.
comments from schoolmates at the time where you say,
Not so much. I mean, I had some really close friends then who would have received the book and would have enjoyed the photo, but the process was more my father's process, the creative
yes,
process.
of course.
I really just sat for a photo and then I saw that this painting emerged, which I have still. It's in my room hanging. So that was
A lot of
also
people
a
have it.
treasured gift.
And
Sorry?
you just take it for granted that, okay, yeah, that happened.
Yeah, that happened. So actually, in a way, I sort of treasure the
Mhm.
paint because it's a picture on canvas, and I didn't even know back then that you could do that. So it's really a lovely, just piece, portrait, and I'm sort of looking down and not looking at the camera. So yes, it was a really lovely experience.
All right, fine. Good for you. Having gone to Wolmer's, how did you know from very early on what path in life you wanted to take and what influenced you?
Oh no, I had no clue. I had no clue. I
Oh,
wanted to be a doctor.
mhm.
I wanted to be a doctor. So I did all the science subjects in fifth form. And I did well at some, I didn't do well at others. And I recognized that I was much better at what we would call liberal arts or humanities-based subjects.
Mhm.
My mom taught history many years at the Queen's School and other schools, but primarily Queen's while I was growing up. And so it sort of felt a little natural that I would go in that realm of studying history. I also liked literature quite a bit and language, English language. But certainly in high school, I mainly thought I wanted to do medicine, and that did not work out. And so when I went to the University of the West Indies, I actually wanted to do psychology because I do like to psychoanalyze persons and counsel. I like to do those things. And when I went to the top back then, you had to line up at UWI in a long line, an actual physical line. And you didn't have online registration. I think we were the last year before online registration. And when I got to the top of the line, the persons who were there said, psychology is full. And someone nearby said, come to history. Oh, you did well in history. Come to history. And that's the rest is history. So that really is how I got into humanities and liberal arts studies at the tertiary level. So it's kind of like buck up, almost. Not that, obviously not buck up. That's where I was supposed to be. But I tend to
Exactly.
sort of
You
tumble
see me
into the
nodding
things
my
that I
head.
need
You
to
see
do.
me shaking my head. It's not at you.
Sorry?
It's not at you. I said, you see me nodding my
Oh,
It's
yes.
not you, Dahlia. It's you touching one of my greatest pain points,
What's that?
signing up at the University of the West Indies.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, it's
On
really
first year,
challenging.
I
Yeah.
cried because of the long lines
Yeah, it was really
and the
rough.
confusion. And I saw my mom so wanted me to go to university, and I'm like, I'm not going up there. And then I had to go up there. I don't think I've gotten over it. But that's how life is. You are supposed to do exactly what you ended up doing.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Liked it.
Yeah.
You already mentioned how your mom, because she I want to say good night to Mrs. Bean and Mommy Bean tonight. Thank you so much for allowing your wonderful family to be here with me tonight. Now, you mentioned that your mom, she taught history and must have influenced you somehow. But it sounds to me like you already were cultured to have this very powerful, strong, independent thinking. Would you say that this is true or not?
Yes, I was really pushed. I think my parents recognized very early that there was something special about me, but I was very reserved. I still am. It's not my go-to to be a public speaker or in spotlight. So it really takes a lot for me to do that. So they really encouraged me to do the things that I wanted to do. So music was a big deal in my household. You know, they would send me to music lessons, singing too. And I remember in grade 6 at St. Richard's Primary, I was encouraged by my parents to do an essay, something to do with pollution. And I think that he still has that.
Of
And I
course.
came second in the island for this essay in pollution. I know they helped, but my parents have never done stuff for me. I really did most of it, but I remember them helping me, craft this essay after I had done all the groundwork in grade 6. And I think I came second in the island
In
in
the
that
Gleaner
essay
too,
competition.
yes?
Yes.
I came in the Gleaner, and so I think the writing aspect maybe started from there, because I really have always been good at languages, very bad at spelling. I get that from Daddy. Very, very bad at spelling.
Listen, he had to influence you in something.
Yeah, math and spelling. Oh God, terrible. But I would write, and I think the writing was a way to express myself because I didn't want to say much, and usually still don't actually.
Yes, yes, yes. I
Mhm.
get it. I get it. You know, Errol, as a dad of Delia,
Yes.
some of the hopes and dreams that, started out in your head when she was first born. When you look at that newborn baby, this baby girl, what hit you as a dad?
Well, when you see your first child and only child, because the one that would have been first went back at 5 months, that's another story for another project.
Mhm.
And when I saw her and she opened her eyes, looked at me, closed her eyes, and my sister, who was there to assist my wife, she is a nurse, and I was just blown away. But as the years went by, I said to Gloria, I think Dela will do much better at higher levels. She was doing well in primary school, St. Richard's Primary School, the St. Richard's Primary School. And she was doing well at Woolmer's, that is Shelley Ann's High School. We're proud that we are all involved with Shelley Ann School. Fraser Price, that is. And I was moved many years ago to write a piece for her. One of the number of pieces I wrote for her. It's short, so may I read it for her?
Please go ahead.
Okay, so it's called So Proud of You. And I made it into a plaque. It's in our home before our desk, and other people have it, and I have copies here too. So proud of you. Ever since you boldly raised your curious head above the bassinet and wobbled out in search of knowledge, you have conquered some of what I could only dream of, and have succeeded where I dare not try. You have indeed reached for the sky and beyond my anticipations and expectations, achieved excellence. For these and more, much more, I am proud, so proud of you, knowing that the best, the very best, is yet to come. That's number 102, 136, page 136 in our new book, Elevated Liberty.
Mm. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Yes. So for Dana who don't care much for all of the spotlight and everything, hey, it's not every girl who has a dad who dedicates a poem to her. So that is absolutely touching. I'm loving this. I'm
Thank
loving
you.
this. Um, as she continued to grow, of course, you went on about your business doing your thing, Errol,
Yes,
as she focused on doing her thing.
yes,
Delia, for those of you who just joining us, is currently a senior lecturer, and she's the head of the Institute for Gender and Development Studies at the University of the West Indies, Mona. and she's a historian by training, and her research centers on Jamaican and Caribbean women's history. I absolutely I absolutely love that topic. And I tell you why in a moment. Her writing bridges academic rigor and public relevance, illuminating the lived experiences of women across generations. Now, Delia, one of the books that helped me understand my identity as a Jamaican woman, I read, well over 30 years ago. It's by Barbara Bush called the 18th century slave women of the Caribbean, or women in slave society, because they took a look at both the European women as well as the women who were enslaved. And when I read through that entire book, Errol, when I read through that
Yes.
entire book, that's when I saw the complete correlation between history and what was taking place in nowadays life.
Indeed.
You know, I don't know if you have ever met that book, Delia,
Yes,
but
man. I mean, Della has almost every book
I'm
that you
sure
can
she
think of,
does.
and I've read
Yes,
half of it. I haven't
Yeah.
finished it
What
yet.
were your thoughts about that when you buck up on information like that?
Well, she can tell you.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking Delia.
Oh, yes. So, yes, well, so those types of historic narratives, and historiography on our past, whether it be about women, men, children, really is what really influenced the career that I have today. And, learning the stories of the persons who would have written books like that. So, I mean, you mentioned Barbara Bush, but certainly persons like Elsa Govaert, Barry Higman, Kamau Brathwaite, and of course, Lucille Mathering-Mayer, who was the first person to do a PhD on women at the UWI. And that was in the 1970s, 80s, I believe. I don't know, have the exact date, but it was not so long ago. It's in most persons' lifetime to think that someone did the first PhD relating to women's history in our, generation, in our modern memory. And so that was really inspirational to read Mayer's memoirs, to read about her, to read about so many historians like Bush, like, Professor Mary Shepard, Hilary Beckles, these persons who would have been influenced by the work of Mayer to dig deeper. And then the funny thing is, through an examination of women's history, we learn so much about our history in general. And I think that is the beauty of looking at women's history. So it's in looking at this strand of history that we say, but we actually don't know what happened to men, so let's delve deeper into an understanding of what would have happened to different types of male identities. There are persons who have done work on children during enslavement, for instance. So it's an important aspect of the discipline, yes, to understand what would have happened to our foremothers, but in looking at that, it opens up this treasure trove of possibility, and there are so many things that we still don't know about our historical experience. But yes, those types of work really were inspirational and important to the trajectory that I had, even though I didn't specialize on enslavement, really. But, still looking at women in the 20th century, in the early 20th century in Jamaica and in the Caribbean, has been a very rewarding experience as a result of work like Bush and others.
Right. And because I didn't study history, I only did like literature and social sciences. So I didn't get to get my hands deeply into history. I wonder why I didn't choose it. Don't know. But I would have, because I think historical works are so important. So I didn't get the pleasure of delving as deeply into those other books that you mentioned by our own local researchers and persons of scholar who looked into these arena. I myself did a paper, I did a published article on an academic article on why it is that young Jamaican men do not choose education, higher education, as a path of self-actualization. So you're so correct when you say, once we look at the woman's path, let us go look at the men's path. Because I couldn't find work surrounding what my thesis was on that very topic. I'd love to hear what stood out to you most, for instance, when you did your book, Jamaican Women and the World Wars? What hit you most powerfully, Delia?
That women were involved in the world wars. That's the first thing. Most people don't know that Jamaican women were deeply involved in the both world wars, World Wars One and Two, World War One beginning in 1914 and World War Two in 1939. So we tend to just think is if we even consider Jamaica's role being important at all, we would think about male soldiers. We would probably think about the colonial relationship at that time. But the narratives and stories and background and contribution of Jamaican women of every race and class is really critical to our history. And so just to know that they played a role, whether it is that they were working in the country towards like fundraising, women's groups raised thousands of pounds to send to Britain and its allies for various things, buying airplanes and buses and medical equipment and so on from women's groups, while others would have focused on recruitment. So women, especially in World War One, it was upper middle class and elite women that were the face of recruitment of men, even though many times they use the gender in a creative way. So as women, they would have been on the platforms, but shaming the men to do their part as men. So a lot of gender rhetoric happened there. And then importantly, there were women who went overseas as soldiers. So we had about 600 Caribbean women overall participating in the war as soldiers in World War II. And lots of roles, just various roles. There were also women who resisted the war narrative and who did not support the war. So the range of responses that Jamaican women and Caribbean women broadly had towards wars are very critical. And the one of the other findings or outcomes, not for me specifically, I think people had known this before, but I was just realizing, is that the vote for women in Jamaica that came in 1919 ahead of adult suffrage was as a result of women's war work. And so that's not public knowledge, but yes, persons who would have been in scholarship and academia would have known. So it was really a very eye-opening experience for me. And just such a rich experience to actually speak to these women. I mean, I would have done this research about maybe almost 20 years ago now, 18 or so years ago, and some would have been alive. So it was really wonderful to also hear their own stories in their own voices.
So what you're actually saying to me then, Dela, is that we actually have our own Hidden Figures stories.
Yes, definitely.
We definitely have our own Hidden Figures story. How does this research help us? How does all of this really help us today? Anyway, what does it matter with economic factors affecting us in Jamaica and across the world? Different levels of racism across the world and different pockets, different things happening on different continents in the midst of where we are today. How does a research such as yours and a book such as yours be used outside of academia, but also, what difference does it all make?
Well, I guess you could ask that question for anything, I think the difference it makes is that we have to understand where we're coming from. I think if we take any of the great works of Marcus Garvey and other cultural icons, a country or a nation or people who don't know their past, they don't know where they're going. And so many of the places that we like to travel to in North America and Europe, the history is what makes their economy. Yes, you may have tourism, you'll have shipping, you'll have logistics, you'll have all these things, these modern things, but they're built on a foundation of history. You can go to any great city of the world and go to their museums and see their history live and in living color all over the street. And this is what draws a lot of persons to go to the so-called global north. And I don't think that we have really captured the importance of our history to our economic development and to our understanding of self, to our identity as persons. So when, young women, for instance, or young girls know that, women in Jamaica fought in this world war. Why? Why did they go? They were like 17, 18 years old. Why did they pick up themselves and go across the ocean to get bombed at? You know, these things teach you resilience. It teaches you where you're coming from, and it gives you a sense of identity that you otherwise would not have had. And so history is important for the sake of history, just to know it. But certainly it's also important to craft the way forward for economic sustainability and for personal identity. And so I think a lot of our young people would be better off in this country and in the region if they knew the rich, wonderful legacy of people that they had, because we tend to think of ourselves as just the sons and daughters of enslaved people and, you know, all the narratives that come with that. But understanding the resilience, the work that would have gone in to get them here, to get you here, understanding all of that is really, really critical to a good, solid sense of self.
Yes, I 100,000% agree with you. And I like the boldness and the powerfulness with which you speak, because I believe that some of what ails us today is that these 18-year-olds or 17-year-olds, too many of them feel like the world has just begun with them.
Yes,
Feel that,
literally.
right?
In the beginning started with their
Yeah,
birth. Yes,
exactly. So that's what they think and believe, not knowing that there's a long thread of support and, you know, survival and endurance that came long before them. Now, on the other hand, you, Errol, when
Yes.
you go to write, as we're talking about women in the war effort at the front lines or behind the scenes, you, on the other hand, you love to pen poems in ode to women. And I
Yes.
remember, yes, you are very, very woman centric in your outlook, in your praise. Why has this become so for you over the years from day one?
Well, I'm gonna have to give you the clip note version, as my wife would say, because this is the world. This is my world. You know, it began with my mother, who came from Clarendon, went to Hanover, Maryland, and met my father. You know what she saw in him, because I understand he was short, passed some of that to me. And they kept telling her not to marry this man, but I guess he had a cute nose and he was half Indian and so on. And she married him, and she had 3 children in a few years, you know,
Mhm.
51, and 52. And then he left on the Windrush to take us over to England, as was the practice. We boasted to children in our primary school in Maryland that we are going to England, and we kept going and going and waiting, and it never happened. Cut the story short, my mother took us from Hanover, brought us back to Clarendon, and then she struggled and struggled, did all kinds of odd jobs, got us out when eventually we landed in Frankfield, courtesy of her. One of my sisters stopped in Lucy with some rich people who liked her because she was kind of brown and she had quote unquote pretty hair and so on.
All
And
here.
me and my sister came to Frankfield, went to Edwin Allen School. It was Compre then, same Compre that is doing well in Edwin Allen now. And so my mother set the space for me. And then secondly, my wife, Gloria,
Mhm.
of the Beantree clan, she has been everything from that time when we met at university under the undercraft. And a long story again, which I've written about in another space. The point is, then you have a daughter like Dela, which is not that she, because she's our daughter, but she's phenomenal. You hear her, I'm just sitting back listening to her. She says she doesn't like to talk, and she doesn't. If you see the number of countries, Iceland twice, South Africa, almost everywhere in the world, she has gone, and I've tracked her, written down some of her speeches, a whole big chapter of 100 pages on her I have written so far. And I'm saying, God willing, and we get out the other volume before I leave this world, it will be about women. And I know when I was on your program some time ago, you read one of my most beloved poems for women, To Woman. And I don't, don't ask me to read it. I'm not good at reading. But my life has been built around women.
Mhm, mhm.
And so also one of my sisters, Joan, She's in New York now, Long Island, and we struggled together. And when she went to Scotland, she sent up two pair of high heel boots, 4-inch high heel boots or 6 inches platform. Bob Marley used to wear them too, so I don't feel no way. And she sent up my suit and said that I could get married in 1978 after we just left university, have no money and everything. And so women is everything to me. And
Yes.
I really love women. And so many of my poems, I've written pieces for some of the women who are listening to us right now. We better start calling names. From England to the US, from wherever they are women. I've written about 5 pieces for men because, you know, I incidentally, some of my more tear-jerking pieces are about my mother and my father, who I just forgave in 2003 or so when I was writing the book because of what he did and what the struggle we went through. But women mean a lot to me, and I adore.
Did you ever get to meet back your father, by the way?
No, he left when I was about 4 years old. The last thing I saw of him was in the back of a milk truck going to Lucy, squatting in the truck. And he didn't look because maybe he was crying or just ashamed and so on that he was leaving us. And we never saw him again. I saw pictures of him when I was about 7, 8 with my grandmother. And I wrote to him a letter when I could write. We never heard, and then he died at age 65 some years ago. And so, of course, you know, when I was coming to the age 65, I was worried stiff. Will I make it past 65? But I'm going towards 75 now and still doing well, thank God.
Look at God.
Yes.
Now, when you and you never made, I'm just curious because
Yes.
they had brought up the whole thing about, you know, we're looking at the women, but what
Yes.
about the men? And incidentally, another one of our authors had written a book that talks about what happens to the family when one parent migrates,
Yes.
whether it is to England or the United States or wherever they go.
Yes.
So never in your adult life did you seek out to meet him in person?
No, remember now, he became estranged from we were at high school in the 1960s. And
Right.
I understand that he got married again or was with some
Okay.
woman. I don't mean it in a derogatory way. He got involved with, and I understand we have relatives. I have one or two brothers, white brothers or sisters in England. Incidentally, when my sister went to Halifax, was it Halifax or the other place in Scotland, she met one of them.
Okay.
But she didn't tell them that she was sister to them because she was so angry and she didn't want to go meet him. He was alive then. But we never got any way, you know, I know he landed in Birmingham, either Birmingham or Wolverhampton. We hear about those ham. And so that was it. But we didn't have any access to him. And then, you know, when he died at age 6, when my mother died in 1974, he found contact with my biggest older sister and tried to get the death certificate so he could marry to this woman who he was living with for such a long time. It's a very big story. And
This sounds like a whole genealogy, gerontology,
yes,
experience, sociology,
and
history.
you know something?
In daily, or right in your own family, you
Yes,
have this whole. I think everybody's family has stories like this.
yes.
I don't think that we're unique. I
No,
think
not at all.
everybody's family has stories like these. And I'm sure with some of the writers we have tuning in with us right now, like Andreen and Zamira Karen and Mr. Damali, Elaine Williams, Morgan, every one of us have these amazing mix up, come forward, go back home stories. So
Yes.
maybe Delia, that is something you can turn your attention to. How it is, how do we navigate in our social structures in Jamaica as we continue along? If you're just joining us, you're watching Why I Write. My name is Totlin Oliver, and our guest this evening is a father and daughter duo of Dr. Delia Bean and Errol Bean. Errol himself, a musician and a pastor, as well as an author, poet. And Delia is an academic researcher, publishing articles in the local newspaper and traveling across the world, attending various events and conferences as she takes a look at women's stories in history. Do you, Delia, have a clip from or an excerpt from one of your books, especially this one here, that talks about um, of our experience in world wars that you'd like to share with us that gives us even a greater insight into some of the interesting things? Because you say you personally got to speak with some of these women.
Yes, I did. So actually, I was looking for the book when I came home. I think it's actually at work. So in terms of reading a piece, not necessarily, but I definitely can share some of the interesting sound bites from some of these women, particularly those, as I said, who actually went to war as soldiers. Just to note, however, that these are not the only women that I would have looked at. In fact, the minority. But the rich sort of interview experience took place with those particular women. I remember speaking to Ina Collymore Woodstock, who actually is still alive. She lives between Jamaica and Barbados. She was Jamaica's first woman judge, and so many firsts. But I remember speaking to her, and I asked her what was her motivation for going to war, and she said she wanted the adventure. It was really unusual for me to think of these very, very young women at this time, in the 1930s, just wanting adventure and not necessarily thinking of the safety issues. As I said, this was a very actively violent war where millions of persons passed. But anyway, she told me that she wanted the adventure, and she went to sign up at the local war office, and she got her training, and they put her behind a desk. And she sat behind that desk doing secretarial duties for perhaps a couple of months. And she was in Girl Guides. She was very, very big in Girl Guides before that. And she said she's a guide, and she's not used to such easy life. And so she wrote to the War Office in the United Kingdom and asked them to change her to something with more action. And they moved her from the kind of regular secretarial role to anti-aircraft operations. And so she actually did work where, they would, as radiographers, would send codes to persons to say if this is an enemy airplane, this is a friendly, this is allied, this is Axis power. And so she was really frontline in the action there. Now, women would not have been allowed to use weaponry, and so they were not shooting, but they got the same training as men. So I also learned that from a lot of the women that I spoke to. They got the same training. They would have been trained at Up Park Camp. They went to the United Kingdom. Some went to Canada. Some went to Washington, D.C. and did advanced military training. And their experiences, just hearing how they navigated newness, meeting persons from all over the world, was very, very rich for me. And then the other aspect of the experience was not only the work that they were able to do as soldiers, but what happened afterwards, because a big part of the motivation, apart from wanting adventure and wanting to see the world, a lot of them wanted to be educated at the tertiary level. They would not have had that opportunity in 1930s Jamaica to go to university, and they wanted to get that additional training and skills, so again, for Ina Collymore Woodstock, she went to law school after the service and, became a revered lawyer and then eventually a judge. And, other women have had similar trajectories. I'm just pinpointing her. She's still alive and can tell her own story and told it to me so graciously. So, but they really had, yes, they were also loyal. Many of them would have been loyal to the monarchy at the time, but there was always this thread of what they could do to better their lives, what they could do, and whether that is through associations, through networks. It also gave women an option outside of only getting married. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Many of them went on to marry and have families, but they were able to see a wider range of options, and many went to school before, embarking on marriage. So it's just so wonderful to have sat and learned and listened to women tell their own stories about service, and to debunk some of the myths for those persons who may not have known that they were involved at all, but also that they only didn't go because it was a thing to do to support England. They really wanted to support themselves as well.
Wow, that is mind-blowing. That is, I'm sitting here and I want to go and make a movie right now.
Yes, when I saw that movie
Hidden
by
Figures.
Tyler Perry the other day, I said, wow, I really wish this could happen for our Caribbean, not only Jamaican, but
But
to
yes,
expand the scale, because it's saying, you know, women from the Bahamas, from
Chris,
Trinidad and Tobago, from all over had similar experiences.
how easy or difficult was it for you to reach out to these women, interview these women, collect the information, and create a whole? Was this your thesis, for instance?
Right. So yeah, Jamaican Women and the World Wars was my PhD thesis. So, and as I said, the women who were soldiers, it's really a small, the majority of the thesis is not about them. Actually, there's lots more information, archival information that had to be garnered for that work. But in terms of the actual women, I think it was sort of what we'd call snowballing.
Yeah.
You know, just kind of hearing about one, tracking them down. They would have known, they still, you know, had their friend groups
Mhm.
and would have told me about others. And they were just so willing. They were just so excited that someone wanted to hear what they had to say about their experiences, you know. So even though they were quite elderly, they were really very willing. You know, one of my mother's co-workers too at the time had a link at Curfew Place. And so that was a way to kind of get a sense of that. There are also a few memoirs that are not televised, recorded at different archives all over the world. So in the United Kingdom, for instance, there are some that are stored there, and I really should do my part too to add to that, you know. But of course, at the time, again, not taking myself too seriously, I wouldn't have got the permission from the woman to store the actual recordings in other spaces. So I do have to be careful. Long before Data Protection Act, you know, you have to honor the ethics of that. But I still have those cassettes. It was done on cassette at that time, you know. But I think I hope really that I've done, you know, something to make their voice be heard, even if persons can't hear the actual recordings.
If I may butt in, Dilla, could you speak to the impact on our politics through some of these women when they returned? I know there's a very intriguing story there as well.
Oh, right. So they did have impact on our policies. As I said, even before World War II, the vote for women, which came long before 1944 and adult suffrage, was as a result of women's war work. And so from 1919, you would have had, yes, women who would have owned property, middle class, upper middle class women. But the fact that Jamaica was one of the first countries in the world to grant women the vote, after only, I think, New Zealand and the United States, is also something that's really important for our own country, the understanding of our country's legacy and the value that was placed on women very early. And also the women who would have returned again as lawyers, as, you know, trained at the tertiary level, they became very active too in political organizing, in the Pan-African movement, in that sort of 1940s decolonial movement towards independence and so on. So thanks for mentioning that, Daddy, that yes, they did have quite a bit of impact on the political, either in political parties or in the general thrust towards decolonizing Jamaica from the United Kingdom, which they went to support, ironically.
That's good heavy stuff. Good heavy stuff. How did you come to publish your book on this? You want to say hi to Yvonne tuning in as well. You know, how easy or difficult did you find the process of putting your thesis into publication format and finding the right publishers to handle your material?
Right. Well, being in a university space in academia, publishing is part of what you do. It's part of the job description or occupational hazard, if you want to call it that. So it's really, I didn't have much of a choice. If you do want to progress, you do have to publish. And for most persons, the thesis at the PhD, sometimes at the master's level, is that body of work that allows you to do that. But a thesis is a very different thing from a book, and I quickly recognized that after I, you know, started that publishing process. The way you write and think, you know, now you're an authority. You don't write like you're trying to pass an examination anymore. You also have to make choices about what people want to see and what's just for an academic audience. So there are lots of difficulties, or not difficulties, but challenges, hurdles that, I had to overcome. Also, I had to put down the work for a while. I think it was about 5 or 6 years that I just didn't look at it. I just did other type of work so I could get some distance. Some persons may have a different sort of model. Some people will really want to just do it right away and get it out the way, but I had to get some distance from it. It was a very long journey to a PhD, and I just was tired of it. I was tired of seeing the same things over and over. So I had to get a little distance and do other work in the meantime. And I was able to pick it up back another 5 years or so after graduating and making that sort of intellectual shift from, as I said, doing something for the purpose of moving on in your career or passing an exam, to doing something that I think an audience would be interested in reading, a wider audience. And I was able to go through the academic publishing route. So it was published by Palgrave Macmillan. And they did a really wonderful job to help me as a first-time author to, overcome some jitters. So that was a good experience.
Did you check with your dad or mom for guidance on how you navigate completing your work? And, especially when you felt so detached from it and you needed a whole 5 years break.
Not directly like that, but my family has always been, the ultimate support. In very unusual ways. I think, even when you started and said my dad is proud of me, I know that on a very deep level, but I never grew up with bells and whistles. You pass the exam. Oh, that's wonderful. Congrats.
That's what you're supposed to do, right?
Next, So you kind of have this feeling of it's like a stream. It's like a constant stream of love and affection, but there was really no waterfalls. And that's kind of just how I think we support each other generally.
Yes.
I think as we have all matured, then there are things that we celebrate with a little bit more fanfare, but generally it's really the everyday, that everyday support and help. So I don't really remember going to them specifically about those challenges, but just always knowing that they were there, had my back, and would do lots of practical things to assist me as well, is very, always important to my journey.
Excellent. Now I'm getting a question here from our audience. Any collaborations in future, do you think? Delia, Errol?
You mean both of us?
Together, yes. Oh, you mean that was
Put it this way.
Outside of this,
Dela is a scholar. I am a creative writer, without that scholarly background, Dela is a scholar. And I mean, when we hear her on TV presenting, whether we are looking at stuff from Iceland or South Africa, I am saying this is our daughter, and we try to keep it humble because we know anything can happen any day, so we don't boast. We always say idiot boast because tomorrow morning you could have a problem. So we don't boast, but we are very proud. And Dela, I must ask you to tell our audience how your mother's thesis, master's thesis, helped to inspire you to do further work on her work for your PhD, if you can slip that in.
Yeah, that's definitely important. So yeah, my mom did a master's thesis in history on the impact that the Gleaner had on public perception of World War II. And yes, and seeing her go through that process where she literally wrote that thesis by hand on her
bedside, and she was having some medical challenges.
Yeah, she had some medical challenges at that time, but she was, just to see her go through that process, and come up with this thing that was later typed and bound. We still have it, and in reading that, she mentioned women like once or twice, some little nuggets here and there. And that really sparked my interest. It wasn't the catalyst for me to do the work, but I definitely used it a lot as a resource. It also helped me to know which sources to check, what do we look for archivally, and she did a lot of interviews as well. And so, yeah, that's a very, very, very important part of the journey. So, mom is also part of that legacy of writing.
And I
Yeah.
would like, Kathleen, about the women, I would like to pay tribute to Professor Vereen Shepherd. She took Dela while she did a supervise her PhD thesis, and Professor Vereen Shepherd has opened a lot of doors for Dela. And so I could not leave this program without paying tribute to her as part of the women who have assisted us and so on. And of course, if we had time, I would tell you how the great Bob Marley, and through the foundation, gave Dela a scholarship, the first Bob Marley scholarship to do our university, got her first degree, first class honors. So we give thanks to the Rasta man, the icon, the great Bob Marley.
There you go. You see?
Lots of stories. There's lots to tell.
But you see, this is it. This is it. And this is how I know that we are definitely Sandy Bradshaw say yes, and we're proud of mommy.
Yes.
Daddy and Dr. Bean. That's what Sandy Bradshaw says. Yes, being by a pick, #love sign. Yeah, you're correct.
Yeah.
This is why we have these conversations. We have these conversations so that we can start to unearth and showcase. Because look, if you go to a conference in Iceland, half of we're not gonna be, most of us are not in Iceland.
I'm not going there.
Experience. What you afraid of, sir? What you afraid of?
That distance, me can't travel so long until him.
Right? When we have these discussions, what happens is that we begin to start to think in new ways, even as audience members, even if we're not interested in scholarly pursuits.
Yes.
Even if we're not interested in creative pursuits, but we're more interested in scholarly. I'm interested in both. The fact of the matter is that we are excited to know. I mean, it's nice to be humble and all of that, but it's nice to know if people don't share outside of the expected usual circles of that which we have access to and we can know about, because we know young people. Each of us know young people that we can tell them that, do you know that women from the Caribbean played a very serious, we always heard about Mary Seacole, yes, to the fact that we have Mary Seacole Hall as one of the dorms at Mona, University of the West Indies. But we need to hear and know that our own doing this kind of work so that we can refer it to somebody else who it helps more. There are many teachers, for instance, here in the United States from Jamaica teaching history, and they are teaching about our culture. They're teaching about our bandana, ackee and sawfish, breadfruit, and so on. But I will give you any money. Well, I don't even bet, so I'm not giving you no money, right? But I can bet you any money. I'm still not betting. That's a disclaimer. That they're not talking about these women. They're not talking about these women that you have written about, Delia. And I'm sure a bulk of their work, they're not speaking about the work of Olive Sina, Vereen Shepherd, and the other scholars that you have mentioned. And yes, we all see pictures of every one of you going to these various international conferences, and we stay by the sideline and we cheer you on. But we don't know the depth and the impact of your work because we're not at the University of the West Indies with y'all. We're not studying history right now. And
that's why the public engagement is important. And, there are lots of ways that we try to do that, even through where I work at the Institute for Gender and Development Studies, because we're not just an academic space, but, interacting with everyone from all walks of life is really part of that. But definitely, I definitely appreciate what you have said. And even for my own work, one of my dreams is actually to make it into a children's book, but that sort of thing takes time and resources. But I would love to do a children's version of it because I want little boys and girls to, have an understanding that these are real people. They were young people. They were, almost children themselves when they were doing these things. and so on. And to the question of collaboration, I would not put it past my father, because he in particular is, very big on the family connection and making that link. And even though my work, yes, is scholarly, I do find that I try to write scholarly work in a creative way, because I want people
Yes.
to resonate. I want it to resonate with people. I don't like to do things that people find boring. And so I do try to find a way to do that. So let's see, Lord willing, you never know, something may happen down
I
the line.
was going to say, Dela and Kathleen,
Mhm.
most of my writing is not in the book that's published. This is a side book that I decided to put. I've written hundreds of pages on the journey, and I am going to ask Dela to write the introduction, looking at the Windrush story. So if life spare and my wife allows me to write some of the things that I want to write in there, she's listening and saying, no, don't write that. So, but look, you will get a massive volume from me, and Dela will do that. That's a collaboration, we promise you. And I hope we get back on this, live long enough to
Yeah.
finish it and get you talking about that other book, My
Yeah.
Stories.
This is very interesting. There is an author we also spoke with from out of England. His name is Stephen Bourne, and he wrote about black poppies.
Mm.
And those are the West Indian men who participated and in the world wars as well during the Windrush era. And I'm here to say that it is good to know that our own is writing about subjects like that, and our younger people as well. And this is why it's so important. We just started this conversation, literally. We're just an hour in and we just started the conversation, but this is hopefully to stimulate further conversation. And already we got from you, Dela, that you're looking at the children's book. Get it done. You can there are ways to get it done that is not hampered. I think probably your greatest challenge probably right now would be time, because of the things you have doing. But with a little help, expeditiously, you should be able to do that. Because when you say write a children's book about that situation, that story, I'm saying, oh my God, that would be so much nicer and better than Nola. You remember those Nola books, Errol?
Of course.
Andreen, you remember those Nola books?
Andreen would remember that. And
Elaine,
Sandy
you remember
too.
those Nola books? So, that would be so much a better story. And I think that as Caribbean people having great international world outlook, we sometimes just hang on to our island mentality where we don't go as far as we can, because our work is undoubtedly incredible work. It's such sterling work the way we do, the extent of work that we do. When I do presentations or so on here, people feel like you're doing too much, but that's just our standard, and it covers all the bases. So we will stand out wherever we go. You know, we could talk for all night.
All night.
But we're gonna pause here, and I'm gonna invite my listeners, my audience, if you're watching the replay or you're watching live, to check out these works. The work by Errol, and the work is let me just pull up the book here once more so I can say. And oh, by the way, I have to say that that Dahlia, what is this Jamaican Women of Distinction holding up more than half the sky by Dahlia? What is that?
That was
RGR.
our book commissioned by the RJR Gleaner Communications Group a few years ago, which
Right.
looked at 60 plus women who were alive at the time, most of them still are, that have made really exceptional contribution to national development. So yes, very proud of that work as well.
So that's another very, very interesting work that you can get, folks. That is the Jamaican Women of Distinction holding up more than half the sky. And that was commissioned by RGR Gleaner Communications Group. This is why it's important to write, because you can also be commissioned to write. We also have gender-based violence in the Caribbean, a very, very big topic, historical roots and contemporary continuities. And this one was edited by Professor Vereen Shepherd, and that's forthcoming in 2025.
Yeah, Prof. Shepherd and I worked on that together. It was really a rich experience working with her.
I
That
tell you,
edited collection.
we may need to have an extra part 2 of this conversation, Dela, when it comes on to March of next year, when we look at Women's Month, because we don't just like to do the shallow stuff. We like to get in depth. So, I mean, hey, so we enrich our world, and that's what we are here doing. And for you, Errol, your Elevated Levity,
Yes.
Poetic Evening and Nuggets of Wisdom is now available on Amazon.
Yes. And the
That's
ebook will be out soon.
Okay, awesome. And you also have A Flower Blooms, as
Yes.
well as Cynthia Schloss's memoir, An Inspiration of Love and Friendship That Never Grows Old. And
Yes.
Dela, we can also get your work online.
Yes, yes. So the Jamaican woman of distinction that actually is in bookstores, pharmacies and so on. It can also be found online or at the Gleaner Company and RJR Group. And the other work on women in the world wars can be bought on Amazon or through the publisher Palgrave Macmillan.
All right. So there you have it, folks. New books to add to your library. Get it, talk about it, let's share, because this is how and this is again another whole long conversation. This is how we're gonna stay human in these years to come. I'll say no more at this point, but I want to thank you so much, Dr. Dela Bean, for being here with me tonight, and your father, Mr. Pastor, musician, right now.
Farmer.
Errol Bean, thank you so very much for taking the time out to share with us here tonight on Why I Write,
You're
to
welcome.
impress us, to inspire us, to impress upon us. I know y'all not into rise and boast, but thank you so much for impressing upon us the importance of our own history, the importance of our own family history is the reason I asked you both here. The importance of recalling our history and documenting our history so it lives beyond our own lives, because I think it is important to lend our identity to ourselves, back to ourselves, because sometimes the way things are going in life, it's like we're not talking about these things anymore. But we still are human, and we still are men and women of the diaspora, of the Caribbean, of this world. And we're so grateful for the work that you do and continue to do. And we look forward to hearing more from you both. Thank you so much again. And thank you, audience.
For having us. It was really lovely.
I'm glad you enjoyed. Take care, walk good, and I see you soon.
Yes.
Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I know I don't have no boys in here. We want to thank you so much for joining us for this week's presentation of Why I Write. If you liked it, if you enjoyed it, please do share with a friend.